it, guys.
Hey everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us. I am so excited to kick off the Diablo segment of our show, and I am honored to be here on behalf of all of our Diablo teams to share the news and updates we have in store for you today. We've got a lot of Diablo to cover, and I hope you'll agree with me that it's a great time to be a member of this community.
Heck yeah!
All right, let's kick things off with Diablo 4. We first shared our game with you during BlizzCon of 2019, and we've been truly humbled by your response. We've kept in touch through quarterly updates and sincerely appreciate the thoughts and valuable feedback you've provided as we unveil more and more of the game and share in its development.
Yes, yes.
After all, Diablo belongs to you as much as it belongs to us. Most recently, we teased an update to our campfire screen, and savvy fans, of course, understood that we meant more than just the character lighting and fire visual effects. That's right. Today, we're happy to announce a brave new soul joining the barbarian, the sorcerer, and the druid on this dangerous journey back to Sanctuary.
And
A class is one of the most exciting things you can announce in a Diablo game. This one is especially exciting to me, as it's a re-envisioning of one of the first classes to ever appear in the series.
ooh.
Let's have a look.
Your prayers do not fall on deaf ears. Just know they are being heard. There is justice within the light, but you have to be patient. Now, pray with me. May Akarat guide and protect me.
May Akarat guide and protect me.
May he shepherd my soul
May he shepherd my soul
and grant it mercy.
And grant it mercy.
What are you doing here? This is not the time.
But this is confession. And I have sinned. I was a thief who stole from those more fortunate. I strayed from your light and found my trade in the shadows. They call it murder. I say, job well done.
Oh my god!
I am a thief, a heretic, a murderer, Father. Will Akarat save me?
You mock our light. But those monsters were a scourge upon my flock. And you were the answer to their prayers.
Then we are settled, and you owe me.
The name you seek is... Thank the heavens for you.
Heavens? I assure you, Father, the heavens didn't send me.
Bro, guys. I love how dark it's looking, guys. It's looking a lot like 2. I'm so hyped. Oh, yes! Ooh, demon! Oh my god! Oh my gosh, I cannot wait, guys. I cannot wait. Oh, the ears. What are the guys?
Just the sound of that ear getting pierced by the hook is
I
so
was thinking
brutal.
the
I feel
same
it's gonna
thing. I was
haunt me
like-
for a long time.
Oh my
I've been a
god.
huge fan of the Rogue ever since the original Diablo. Even seeing them come back as NPCs and mercenaries in Diablo II's Rogue Encampment served as a great bridge between the games. With the setting of Diablo IV being a larger world than we've ever played in before,
How awesome.
we're excited to show you not just what the successors to the original Rogues in the series have been up to since the fall of their order, but also what some of the other Rogues in the world of Sanctuary might look like. The mantra for Diablo IV has been customization first, and the Rogue takes this to a whole new level. From the beginning, the Rogue has been an incredibly flexible class, able to adapt to any situation. Our goal is to let you create the kind of Rogue that you want to play.
Awesome.
Whether it's an unrivaled archer modeled after the original Sisterhood, or a cloak and dagger rogue from the
Ooh,
darkest
cool.
alleys of Chaldeum. In Diablo IV, you will have the freedom to create the rogue that you imagine by customizing the looks, the background, and the playstyle of your character. Please stick around for our segment later today,
Heck yeah.
where I'll be joined by other members of the Diablo IV team to share a closer look at the rogue class, as well as some of the open world gameplay that we're bringing to the game. Spoilers, those severed ears are not just for show.
Ooh, what does that mean?
Diablo 4 is not the only Diablo game we're talking about today.
Diablo
If you're looking
Immortal.
for an authentic Diablo experience on mobile, we've got you covered.
Do you guys all
Diablo
have
Immortal
phones?
has everything you'd expect from a AAA action RPG. From the visceral combat and epic loot to an all-new story, bridging the gap between the events of Diablo 2 and Diablo 3. Later today, you can join the Immortal team, where they'll talk about some of the things they've learned from their recent alpha test and what's next for the game. But that's still not all. We have one last bit of very exciting Diablo news to cover. When you hear us talk about the classes, the items, or the stories of the early Diablo games, you may have picked up on the absolute reverent tone we reserve for that golden era of Diablo. Maybe you share that love of the classics, and just hearing us talk about them makes you want to take on Mephisto or Baal one more time. Or maybe even for the first time. After all, some of our favorite moments happened a long time ago, and not just in Sanctuary years. If so, we have a special surprise for you today. Let's check it out.
What is it, guys? What is it?
How was it not yours, a wanderer?
Now you know what I seek, Marius.
Were these the demons from... Don't do it! It seems not... I'm not acceptable of an enemy.
Diablo II Remastered! Available now?
Of terror.
Bills, guys!
Though this be our darkest hour, it may yet be your greatest moment.
It's looking awesome. It's looking great. What? Cross progression? All the loot, guys. Where's the secret scout level?
Not even death can save you from me.
we've been sharing updates with you guys through our blog, whether it's items, skills, zones, even user interface updates, and
I
you
love
guys
that
seem to
tree.
have really enjoyed that. Today, to mark the special occasion of Blizzconline on Blizzard's 30th anniversary, rather than doing a blog, we're actually going to share lots of video, introduce a new class like we saw in opening ceremonies, and also cover some open world topics, including mounts, camps, and PvP.
Yeah, this is like the ultimate blog post, right? We get to actually hand deliver it. This is the dream. It's all finally out there, and we can talk about all of it. There's the rain of arrows off the mount for the win, and then when that guy takes the ear and he stretches it onto that hook right at the end, it's like, oh.
That ear box never gets old. You know, I always wonder where all those ears from Diablo 2 when you kill other players went.
Now you know there's some creepy guy in a church collecting ears and putting them in a box. Just what we always thought.
No spoilers, but we're going to be hearing a little bit more about World PvP a little bit later in the segment, but ears are definitely making a comeback. But let's go back to the class, because there's just nothing more exciting to be able to introduce to a Diablo game than another class for players to check out.
Yeah, this is a pretty cool thing. We don't get to do this very often, right?
I think it was you that said that, John. There's always room around the campfire.
There's always a little room.
We had kind of like very core archetypes to begin with. The brute strength of the barbarian, the arcane knowledge of the sorceress, kind of a return of a shape-shifting classic with the druid. No RPG lineup is complete without that dexterity class that's kind of like defeating enemies with finesse, with speed. And we kept coming back to just the idea of bringing it to the kind of the godfather of all dexterity-based archetypes, the rogue that we saw in Diablo 1.
I mean, you got to be excited to have the rogue back. I mean, I know that like when we were exploring different classes, like you had talked about some of your experience with Diablo 1, right? Oh, for sure. So one of the things that's super cool is like the rogue was always able to adapt their playstyle. So fans of Diablo 1, Diablo 2 rogues will be able to create very archetypical rogues, starting with the weapon selection. On the melee weapon side, rogues can use swords and daggers, as well as bows and crossbows on the ranged side. You know, just those sort of dagger attacks mixed with bow attacks, it's like, it just looks great on screen. With all the classes having this real strong identity as far as the animations and what they do, you think about the druid and shapeshifting, or the barbarian with sort of, you know, his leap attacks. There's just all these great things that you discover with the rogue that you can't really do with other classes. I love that you can start cosmetically from such a iconic place where you're wearing the red armor, you kind of look like part of the Sisterhood of the Sightless Eye from the original games. You know, you can maybe even add some tattoos into the mix, some scars, make that rogue your own.
That's
or
really
if
cool.
your fantasy of the rogue is a more traditional RPG outlaw, you're definitely able to create that and put on your kind of hood and half mask and be more of a shadowy character. Yeah, and the character customization, you kind of mentioned it, being able to craft that, you know, that the class of your dreams or your nightmares.
Yes,
it was a feature that I was honestly
customization.
super nervous about when we started, because we never had this in a
love that.
Diablo
Or your
game. But seeing
nightmares.
where it is now, it's one of those things that like I'm super excited about with where we're at. There's just a lot of creativity and fun looks, and you can be that you know, tattooed criminal outlaw, or you can be a more noble looking kind of, you know, sort of like thief with good morals. Well, one of the things that we kind of kept running with beyond just the cosmetics was customization. We had this niche to fill in the class lineup that spoke to the finesse player, to the dexterity player, and just that everyone's idea of what that could be was a little bit different, whether it leaned more on range or melee. But we took that a little bit of a step further. We really wanted to have each class in our game have that one thing that makes you go like, that's bullshit when you see a player use it, and then makes you want to re-roll that class because no other class gets it. For the rogue, it's the class specialization. The 3 specializations are combo points, Shadow Realm, and exploit weakness. I like Shadow Realm because I take the problem and I make it smaller. I mean, it's just, I just pull 3 guys into the Shadow Realm and duke it out, and then I come back in, I'm like, all right, smaller problem. I love the idea of exploit weakness. The way it works is during some of the enemy attacks,
players will see an icon flash over the enemy's head, during which time they will get to retaliate with much more damage than an ordinary attack. If you're quick on the draw, this is the specialization for you. I'm just like a little bit skill capped there, and you know, like every time I try to make it work, I'm just a little bit shy of the skill level that's required for that.
It's almost like you're a surgeon, and it requires a really strong ability to assess what's happening all around you.
My personal favorite is the combo point specialization. As you might expect, this ability lets you build multiple combo points, which enhance your spender's effectiveness in combat. It basically, you just like get into this rhythm of combat of like 3 builders to a spender, lets you build up to these big moments. It almost makes like a rhythm game out of combat, which I really enjoy. And the way the class specializations work is you will work with one of the world groups of rogues around the world in Sanctuary that you will find and do class-specific quests that no other class can do. Whether it's the Sisterhood of the Sightless Eye, the remnants of that order that you choose to work with, or the mercenaries of Kyrgyzstan, or the outlaw smugglers of the swamps of Hawazar, depending maybe on what speaks to your class fantasy,
now, if you group up with friends,
specialization speaks to you, or you find more powerful,
or is
you'll
this like
be
a
able
solo
to complete
activity?
that quest line and then activate that specialization, which then you can mix and match with any of the playstyles. So you could be a combo points, ranged, or melee player, but you could also be an exploit weakness, range, or melee, or hybrid player. It just gives the class such huge variety in builds and playstyles.
I love how that ties into the open world aspect. The ability to go to Kyrgyzstan or Hawazar and get these special quests that only the rogue can get. That touches on one of the things that I love that we've done, which is like connecting the weapons and equipment to regions. When you're exploring the world and you pick up a sword in Kyrgyzstan, it's a scimitar, right? If you're up in Skazglen, which is up in the north, it's more of like a broadsword. It's this sort of like this, it's a subtle thing, but I think it really, different armors that you get in different regions look like they're from the place.
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
so giving that sense of place in the world is something that I every time I play the game, I feel it, I see it in just like subtle ways, and just really enhances the overall sense of immersion and experience. And I just want to see what's around the corner.
The weapons are also like, going back all the way to Diablo II, just such an integral part of the class, and the ability to augment your weapon through magic, through enhancements, is just something that really spoke to us when we try to tap into the core of the class. Going back to those mercenaries that you could hire, it was always kind of cool to see what kind of special arrow shot they would come with. And it's something we paid homage to with the imbue system. All the way from directly elemental imbues like the frost imbue, which feels a lot like the ice arrows that the D2 mercenaries used to shoot, all the way to we expanded it to feel a little grittier, a little darker, into things like poison imbue and shadow imbue. Just the ability to take any sort of attack and kind of mix and match with those imbues.
Once that kind of clicked for me that I could take any ability and imbue it with either of those elements. Rain of Arrows with frost and Rain of Arrows with acid is completely different, right? Like you're essentially freezing the battlefield, and then I just love poison imbue because of the gruesome deaths that all the monsters experience. And we've had a ton of fun making that art, so it's always fun to kind of see the, just a field of goatmen melt into nothing. You just kill everything on the screen in a gory mess.
Yes!
I never really gets old.
It's a really flexible way to take a build that you're already comfortable with, that you already like. Say you're really comfortable with Flurry and Shadow Step as kind of your melee skills, and you find yourself needing more crowd control. Without changing your playstyle, you can just add the Frost Imbue to your bar. And now you're able to use those same abilities to slow down enemies or build up to a full freeze.
Yeah, and Frost Imbue plays pretty well with group play as well, right? Where I can freeze an enemy and somebody else can blow it up.
Or also the way that chills work in the game, they build up to a full freeze. So if your best buddy is a sorceress player, your chill spells and your Frost Imbue chills will actually build up faster than if you were using a single player. So
I like that a lot.
Ask to open with Blizzard before you Frost Imbue, and you'll basically be freezing enemies twice as fast, which is super awesome synergy.
Yeah.
So the last thing that's worth spending some time talking about the rogue is like how mobile the class is, just how able the class is to kind of close the gap between themselves and the enemy, even while they're mounted, you might find yourself, you know, a full screen away and just dismounting into a rain of arrows, closing the rest of that gap with maybe like a dash, and then getting back out of there, dropping some caltrops. They can basically control the fluid motion of combat in a way that no other class can. That's something that beyond all of the other customization options that you have, whether it's the playstyle, whether it's the range at which you engage with enemies, whether it's the cosmetics, just the sheer mobility of the class lets you just adapt to the situations. Even when you would have totally been toast as another class, a room full of elites, you're able to use offensive abilities in creative ways. Abilities like Shadow Step, right? Like abilities like Shadow Realm, abilities like Dash. So you're able to kind of like use them to your advantage in a way that gets you out of a very dangerous situation by picking that one lone skeleton archer that maybe is not surrounded by everything else. You can Shadow Step there, get out of the way, and, you know, live to fight another day, which just feels like such a rogue thing to do.
When I play the rogue, I really do feel like surgical precision. You know, I really feel like I can move through the whole screen without. It feels kind of effortless, and almost sometimes a little unfair. It's like when I go into Shadow Realm and I'm dashing, I'm like, am I cheating? Did I just break the game?
And we'll hear more about PvP in a little bit, but I just couldn't go without mentioning that some of our most feared PvP players on the team play rogue, and just the way they're able to like surprise you. You might be with a group of friends, and just that mobility lets them go to the middle of the group, unleash a rain of arrows that's frost imbued, and before you know it, you're all frozen. And looking at a rogue while you're frozen, let me tell you, there are fewer scarier things in our game right now than that.
So Luis, this was this was like the ultimate blog post. This has been a lot of fun getting to share a new addition to the campfire. And of course, there's probably going to be more in the future, right? We always say there's a little bit more room around that campfire.
That's right. And that pretty much wraps it up for the rogue. So why don't we go to Joe and Karina and learn a little bit more about those open world features that we promised.
Well, thank you to Luis and John for introducing the rogue, which I'm really excited that we finally got a chance to talk about and announce to the community. And we're here today to talk to you about Diablo 4 and the open world. Now, I think maybe the best way to start this conversation, Karina, would be just for me to ask you, like, what are you most excited about what we're adding in Diablo 4 for the open world? Like, what feature, what mechanic, what are you most excited to talk about first?
I am really excited about just exploring the world. I am a huge completist naturally. That's the way I play, and I love exploring and looking around at every single nook and cranny. The more this game has been growing, particularly since last Blizzcon, the more fun I am having just riding around the open world on my mount and exploring everything I possibly can.
Yeah, it's really fun, I think, now that we've kind of taken Sanctuary and just made it so much larger when you're playing through the game. You know, when you compare it to like Diablo 3 or Diablo 2, there's tons of like exploration and movement throughout the world in those games, obviously. But now that we've really been able to embrace the open world concept, we can really dive much deeper into like how does Sanctuary actually all fit together? Like be able to ride from Skosglen to the Fractured Peaks. Like it's very, very interesting that way. One of the things about that I think is really neat is the collection aspect of mounts. So I mean, there's all these horse breeds and other mounts you can find throughout the world. From completing puzzles or just finding hidden locations or slaying certain particular kinds of monsters. Find various horses or things to customize your horse with, like horse armor. There are hoof plates you can get and trophies to show off your accomplishments. There's lots of different ways to make sure that you can personalize your mount, make it really feel like it's your companion.
Yeah, and it's really cool that, like you mentioned with the horseshoes, you get to actually change the speed at which your horse can run. And it's something I like to be able to customize the horse to the type of gameplay that I like to enjoy as a player. And it's really, really fun. I like the amount of variety that you give us.
And I mean, there's more to mounts than just that as well. So like one thing we know we didn't want to do with mounts in Diablo 4 is we didn't want to have like jousting, this idea of like fighting from horseback. It's not really the Diablo experience, right?
Yeah, that's something I'm super excited for. Like we showed last BlizzCon, we had the sorceress, we showed her dismount skill Ice Dash, where she shoots forwards off her mount and destroys everything in her path. Well, with the rogue, we got to have a little bit more fun with it. And the animation department has done a fantastic job of having her leap up into the air and fire down like the rain of arrows that destroys everything.
That's cool.
It's really, really cool. It feels really good.
The idea of like leaping from your saddle and just raining arrows down on your enemies as you pass by, getting down the fray and then starting to like stab people and poison people, like that is spot on what we're looking for. Being able to jump in, engage with enemies from your horse, and then just fight it out, duke it out using your skills and everything else like we want.
It's interesting that your mount can't get damaged, but if a monster actually attacks you while you're mounted, you will actually be forced to dismount. So there is a flip side of actually judging for yourself when you do want to use that skill in order to prevent you from being forced off unintentionally.
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of gameplay there to make sure that you're using it in a way that is most appropriate to help you get where you're trying to go and also fight the monsters you want to fight. One of the things I'm most excited about for the open world right now is this feature we have called camps. So camps are basically these strongholds of evil out in the overworld. And you gotta remember that, decades ago, during the events of Reaper of Souls, when Malthael rose to power, the Reapers killed like 9 out of 10 people throughout Sanctuary. Like a tremendous number of people passed away. Now there's a big power vacuum out here, decades later. And these monsters have started to move into these places. Bandits, monsters, goatmen, all kinds of different creatures, skeletons, the undead, have started to resurface and come back into these areas and start to take them for themselves. You, as the hero of Sanctuary, get to kind of wander through these spaces and begin to reclaim them for the people of Sanctuary. That's part of what makes them really, really neat. Each of them have their own story. They're their own unique fixed place in the world.
Unlike quests are something that happens randomly in the world and you can come across them anyway. Camps are a permanent fixture that you as the player, when you come across that evil, you can actually have a real impact on the open world that everyone else can see, because once you have defeated that evil, one of the really fun things is that you basically unlock that camp and you make a new waypoint that previously didn't exist for yourself, but like suddenly all the marketplaces open up and now you have a blacksmith vendor in a location that previously didn't exist, which I think is really, really cool.
Now, what we're looking at here, this was a village, the village of Karayisu, which now has fallen to ruins. The people here in the Dry Steppes had a problem. The problem was there were bloodthirsty cannibals that dwelled nearby and would regularly raid their community. And the people had to come up with a solution. They weren't strong enough to defend themselves from these cannibals, so they made a dark bargain with a demon. And they were able to gather enough power to push these cannibals out and protect their community, but not without great cost, as we can see here. You're kind of helping resettle parts of Sanctuary in many ways when you take these camps back from the enemy. Vendors will come back, and now suddenly there might be like new quest givers, new stories that need to be told. Dungeon entrances can appear in some of these places afterwards. Like there's all kinds of things that occur after you take over the camp and liberate it from these forces of darkness. And again, it's just so cool to see you permanently change the world as you find these places and kind of wander through and solve these problems. One of the other neat things about camps, and in general, like the overworld, just broadly speaking, is we have so many more opportunities now to kind of play with movement.
It pushes the bar vertically as well as horizontally, and we now have been playing around with the idea of jumping across chasms to allow the player to get access to a location that they previously didn't have.
There's all kinds of areas for players to like find their own path, allowing them extra movement options they haven't had in previous Diablo games.
We are also in a vertical top-down camera for the environment, and so it really breaks up the plane that you typically see as like not only as a developer, as an animator, but also as a player. There's such a huge variety of things that you can possibly do to mix it up and make things a little bit different. There's like certain puzzle elements to it. That it's not so straightforward and not always obvious. So it's not just a matter of running through the world and getting, to your goal. It's you have to think about it.
Yeah, definitely. Now, Karina, I know that you're very excited about PvP.
I'm a huge fan of PvP. I love the first time that we all actually had a chance to, as a whole team, play PvP, because the amount of feedback that generated, I think it took design like 3 days to go through it all. And what that showed me is that I find everyone they either love it or they hate it. And I personally love it. I really enjoy it. So the way that PvP works is that the hatred of Mephisto has been bubbling up from hell and has created these areas in the open world that you can freely walk into that kind of consumes you and makes you turn against your fellow players.
PvP, even in these areas, these fields of hatred, right? Even in these spaces, it's not like mandatory. So these are optional places players can choose to go to kind of collect shards of hatred that they can collect from like killing monsters, from completing events, opening chests, all kinds of ways to earn these things, not necessarily just killing players. And as you earn these shards of hatred, they're kind of in an unpurified state. They're in a basic state. You need to bring them to a purification event in order to turn them into a currency that you can then use in the nearby like small encampments around the fields of hatred. And what's really neat about that is that when you're trying to purify these things, that's when everybody nearby finds out and hears like, oh, okay, well, someone's actually trying to complete a purification ritual. We need to go and kill those players and take all of their shards before they finish. But once you purify them, they're yours. You can't lose them. But before they're purified, they're free game.
Yeah, I think it's really important to note that, like, even if you don't want to engage with other PvP players, you can actually explore those areas and collect the shards of hatred from specifically monsters. But the second you need to then turn them in and purify them into a currency where you can spend them on gear, trophies, and other content, you actually are hostile yourself and actually can be attacked during that single moment. But I think that really creates a lot of opportunity for you to team up with friends for just that one little moment in order to gain the reward that you spent so much time collecting.
That's
so
cool.
You called out earlier that the shards of hatred are used for like some of the vendors you could find in the fields of hatred. There are some special vendors that only kind of arrive in these areas. They'll have special costumes or new mounts and weapons and things along those lines. Nothing that's like strictly more powerful than stuff you can get in other parts of the game, but stuff that really like speaks to your desire as a PvP player. And I think one of the things that's really kind of neat about the system in general is that as a player, if you choose to go hostile, betray other players that are near you, try to get as many shards of hatred as you can, you're going to slowly begin to kind of like infuse yourself with that same curse of Mephisto. And you're going to become a vessel of hatred. Now, once you do that, everyone within a very large radius of you is going to be able to see you as a threat on the map. And they're going to get a bonus for killing you. So when that occurs, you have a set amount of time you need to survive. And if you're able to do that without running away or jumping in a town portal and trying to escape, if you're able to do that and finish that period and manage to escape or defeat your people who are coming to try to destroy you, you're going to get a really big bonus at the end. And that's been really, really exciting to watch in our playtests already as people are like, kind of wrestling for this status and then trying to defend it once they actually achieve it.
Yeah, and there's also the ears that you get to collect as a trophy.
Oh,
it happens
yes!
back to D2, where I think you could sell the ears for 1 gold. I don't know if we're going to be doing that. I know we were playing around with them as a currency at one point, but I think right now it's just a cool trophy that you get to collect and show off.
Heck yeah, guys,
right
show
now,
off all the ears.
Very cool trophy. The thing was really neat about the Diablo II ears, like you could fill up your whole inventory with them, obviously, but being able to see like the people that you took the ears from, like seeing their character names on there, was always like the interesting fun part.
All
kind
like
of proof,
the
like, yeah, I got that person that time, right? So we want to make sure that we embrace that aspect of it. That's the important part for us. I think that's going to be a really, really great callback to Diablo 2 PvP.
Right,
so
yeah.
cool.
So I love where PvP is going, and I love that it is such it's only one part of how large and open the world is, and really harkens back to the adventure in me when I play the game. How do you feel?
I'm super excited as well. I mean, there's so much to look forward to in Diablo 4 right now. Like what we talked about today just scratches the surface.
Okay, guys. Stay a while and listen.
Hi, this is Michael Goff, the voice of Deckard Cain. And I invite you to stay a while and listen.
Oh my gosh, I love this. I love this.
I had been working on another project. They just, they said, we're working on something else. Had no idea what it was. And they said, we have this character that we're thinking about, and we just would like to see if you could read a few lines here and do a quick audition. So, I mean, there was a little bit of a description. This older, kind of wise wizardish character. Maybe he kind of would sound like an older Sean Connery. It was a nice clue to work with because it sort of gave you a little path down which,
oh my gosh,
Deckard evolved. There wasn't like the depth or the layers to his character in the beginning, but his sound, it just sort of appeared. But it was, he was a little more perfunctory to begin with. So he would just kind of, appear with his heraldic staff and go, follow me to find the next soul stone. The stakes got higher, right? As time went on, he just became himself in D2, beyond just being the iconic functionality character that he had been in the beginning. He's got his own issues. It was a pleasure and a joy to be able to just have more to grab onto and a greater range of emotional reality. He became both more helpful and empathetic and more impatient. There were desperate actions that needed to be taken, and there isn't much time left, and no one's listening. And of course, having Leah come into his life kind of changed things. He maybe softened a little bit, but he was more determined than ever to make sure that the light was not going to be extinguished. I think the thing that really is Deckard's hallmark is that he cares deeply about the world of Diablo, the history, the lore, and what's happening around him. It's a blessing and a curse, because if not him, then who? Nobody. And as dark and as horrible as things are, he does believe that there is a pinprick of light in the darkness that he can help expand and open up. Some people have said that even, going back to D1, just the fact that he was there as a companion really helped them. I was surprised initially how people feel about Deckard Cain. I mean, I'm really grateful, whatever impact this character may have had on people, that it's as widespread as it is. I mean, I think the world needs Deckard Cain now and forever.
I'm gonna cry again, guys. Literally.
Well, Sanctuary was a world trapped between the two sides of the eternal conflict. It was filled with beauty and danger. A little too much danger, if you ask me.
I'm literally crying, guys. This is so cute. I can't.
Tristram, of course, was lovely, though these days perhaps not the ideal landing place for a vacation. Perhaps Caldeum. I do recall they had excellent food in Caldeum, although I was almost killed there, too. Oh, heavens, I hope not. I am now in the charge of a young child named Leah. It is my responsibility to protect her from witnessing any of the horrific and soul-robbing sights that I have experienced over my life.
Demons!
There is an ancient prophecy that says humanity shall enjoy peace and happiness forevermore. That's a joke. I expect we shall see them return soon enough. Or perhaps they've never left. Have you gone insane? Why would I ever want to go there? Have I not suffered enough? Well, I did visit Pandemonium once, and I lived to tell about it. That's more than most mortals can claim. But that was enough for me.
He's so good. He's so in character.
Oh, I do so certainly hope so. They must be better than demons, eh? At least I'm sure we'll never see an angel wipe out half of humanity again. Oh, perhaps I should not have said that out loud. Ancient myths, as I recall, say that she helped create the world of Sanctuary, and for that we are eternally grateful. She is also rumored to be quite devious, yes, but she was sealed into the abyss long ago. I doubt we shall ever see her return. Oh no. I should not have said that.
I just realized I should have my horns on for this.
I want to thank you for staying a while and listening to me rattle on. Enjoy Blizzconline 2021, and I will see you sometime in the future. Or the past. I'm not sure which is which anymore.
We love you, Deckard!
A lot of the abilities I notice have like a dual purpose. Like with Monk you can kick, and then you can kick off the wall, and then with Wizard you can place like an ice crystal and then reflect the ray of frost off the crystal, and then just do this big AoE to all the enemies in the area. What was it like designing all that interaction that we don't have in other games?
When it comes to designing the skills for Diablo Immortal, we definitely want to make sure that we're bringing something new, you know? In a lot of ways, it's good when the classes feel familiar, and sometimes it fits like an old glove. People love to have their barbarian with whirlwind and whirlwind through enemies. It's such a classic. People would always want to look for that. It's also really important that we have new experiences, and I think things like the ice crystal and the kick that you mentioned are really important. You want some things that are new, some things that are improved over previous, and some things that are familiar and comfortable. And I think the right mix of all three when it comes to class skills is what lets us have, honoring the Diablo legacy while still pushing in new directions.
One of my favorite things about Immortal is the variety. There's so many different things to do. And as you're leveling, you get to a point where you can't really continue until you do some other quest grinding. I like it because I can go do bounties or, run some Elder Rifts. Was like the break intentional?
Yeah, great question. It was absolutely intentional. A couple reasons for that. In Diablo 3, Greater Rifts were great. They're really fun, but some of the feedback that we got was that people wanted a bigger variety of things to do. There's sometimes just, a lot of a good thing can still, leave you wanting to do other activities. And in Diablo Immortal, we said, okay, well, let's make use of our outdoor world. Let's make use of these instanced dungeons that we've created. Let's give players a variety of activities to do. The other reason to have this variety of activities is one of the goals for Diablo Immortal is we really want to double down on progression. We want there to be lots of ways for people to meaningfully progress their character all the time. And so we have, we have the gem system, and we have legendary gems, and we have gear rank up, and we have legendary collection, we have Paragon. And by having all these different ways for you to improve your character, it lets players sort of really feel like, what do I want to do today?
If it's like a foresty type zone, the layer is going to have like a foresty, mossy type dungeon to correspond with it. That really kind of increases the immersion. I like that idea.
Definitely.
We want you to remember where you are in the surface world as you dive down into the layer.
I love
but that by no means limits the amount of diversity and like rich art we're able to put into each of these tile sets.
Whoa. Oh, that staff! Artwork's awesome.
Hi, my name is Devin Brom. Blizzard has sent me on a dangerous and harrowing quest into the realms of soggy Seattle to interview the nefarious artist, Brom, or as I like to call him, Dad.
Hi, my name's Brom. We're here in my studio today to interview one of Blizzard's devious dungeon designers, Devin Brom, or as I like to call him, Son.
This is so
talk
cute.
about some of your early influences?
I think we'll have to start with my background as far as my lifestyle, meaning my father was an Army aviator, so we traveled all over the world. We moved every 3 years. The first 3 years of my life was in Japan, where I was subjected to just a barrage of Japanese animation and Godzilla films, and that was like my initial inspiration, I think, for a lot of the drawings and the horror and the stuff I did. By moving around so much, it can be very lonely. It takes a little while to acclimate and make new friends. And art was always that friend that was always there. So no matter where I was or how lonely I felt, I had art to fall back on. And it also helped with making friends, because as my skill developed and I became, better than most other people at what I did, there was always a group of geeky fantasy nerds, waiting to draw wherever I went. And then I finally graduated high school in Frankfurt, Germany. And what was so amazing about Frankfurt is I was just immersed in, Gothic medieval culture. And at that time,
architecture,
I was so into fantasy, so that really, fed into that whole inspiration for what I was doing. On top of that, there were a lot of direct influences. Being a child of the 70s, there was a lot of pulp horror mags and comics at the time. But I think my primary influence is the literature, even more so than movies. Big fan of Robert E. Howard and the Conan series, Edgar Rice Burroughs, and John Carter of Mars. But one of my biggest influences was the Elric series by Michael Moorcock, and I think he was one of the first people to really put together, Gothic horror and fantasy.
And then I already know a little bit about this, but could you tell us a bit about Grandma's Basement?
Most certainly. Why have I always been drawn to the macabre? Even as a kid, if you gave me a choice of a fuzzy bear, I'm talking 2 years old, and a skull. I like the skull. I have to have the skull.
This is so me.
I don't quite understand what that's all about. Things I often point out to maybe help people understand this is if you were to maybe go to a group of elementary school kids and give them assignment to draw a toaster, they would all be like, oh, no, that's boring. I don't want to do that. But if you said, I want you to draw a scary toaster, not only does that become interesting to them, but it becomes interesting to us. I want to see their scary toasters. And one of the many things that warped me down the path that I have gone, my grandmother's basement was dug out of the ground, and it was just rocks and dirt. And it was like going into a tomb. It was, there were snakes and spiders and centipedes and all the cracks and crevices.
Gosh.
But the basement had one light bulb. So my brother and I would go down there at night, and the game was to turn the light bulb off. And who could stand there long enough without turning it on? And having the over imagination that I have, I always lost. I always felt like fingers and claws were about to get me. I think that's one of the many things that has perhaps warped me and sent me down the path that I am now upon.
I
so
love
Devin,
that
I have
story.
a question for you. Devin, can you perhaps tell us a bit about your early influences?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, let's see, the most obvious would be Diablo itself. It came out, I was like 3 years old, and it was on your computer like right from the get-go. So I've been playing that pretty much my whole life. So I guess my delve into game design kind of started at like that early of an age, and it never really stopped.
It's amazing how much Diablo has been part of our family from just the earliest memories. I mean, with my first computer, Diablo was one of the first games I played. And then, of course, as soon as we could link them up and play as a family, the whole family, Mom, both you and Devin, you and Killian played. So what was it like growing up with two artists for parents?
Oh yeah, so it's funny, when you're born into that, you don't really realize that it's any different really until you go over to your friend's house, and then you realize like, wait, where's all the skulls? Like where's the battle axe in the corner, like
weapons and skulls. All families should have weapons and skulls. What's going on here?
Around then when I started realizing that something was a bit different with our family. But no, more seriously though, like it was great. Like I feel like both you and Mom always encouraged me and Killian to follow like creative passions, even if it wasn't like traditional art, just whatever we were passionate about and enjoyed doing. You always guide us in that direction, which was very hard to come by in the more like normal suburban community that we grew up in.
Being two weirdos, it was easy for us to encourage you guys to be as weird as you wanted.
Absolutely, yeah, no. And can you tell us a little bit about how you first broke into the industry?
I guess I'll start with the fact that I've always drawn horror and monsters and fantasies. My earliest memories, as I was talking about earlier. But when I graduated high school, I wanted to find out a way to make a living at that. So I signed up for a 2-year commercial art school. And unfortunately, what they didn't teach us was how to draw and paint, which was the main reason I went there. As a matter of fact, they went so far as to discourage us from, pursuing fantasy and horror because they felt like there just wasn't much of a market out there. And in some ways, it's true. It was a very small market. So I followed that path and I graduated and I ended up in this field. I decided I was just going to go to New York City. And New York City at that time was where you broke into book covers, fantasy book covers. And that was like one of the places where most fantasy and horror art was done. And it was make or break. I had no jobs lined up. I was just going to go there and somehow get into this industry. So we're sitting there. The U-Haul is packed. All that's left is our cats in the carrier and the phone. And I'm waiting for a call from my parents. And the phone rings and I pick it up. And it's TSR, it's art director. He goes, "Are you still interested in that job?" And I'm like, "Of course I am." And he goes, "Well, apparently the other 10 candidates aren't willing to move to a small town. So if you would like this job, you can have it." And I'm like, oh my God, yes. And he said, "Now I understand you're probably in a lease and you have a bunch of work to get done before you can make the move. About how many months will it take you to move up here?" And I looked out the window at the U-Haul and I said, "I can be there in 5 hours." And we were. 5 hours later, I was working at TSR.
That's
How
incredible.
cute. Meant to be. I
All
love
right,
that.
so how did you first connect with Blizzard?
So as I mentioned earlier, Blizzard, especially Diablo, has such a long history in our family. And when I got my first PC, a couple of games on it, and Diablo 1 was one of them. And it just, right from the start, this was the game for me. Soon, I was spending 2 hours a day playing Diablo. I was supposed to be working. So I actually had to ask your mother to hide the CD so I could get work done. I think the big thing I want to say about my connection with Diablo and Blizzard is I've done a lot of work for a lot of different companies. And what's wonderful about working with Blizzard Diablo is just the fact that I'm a huge fan. That came through both for myself and for you as well. So it's just been a part of our family since you guys were little kids. How did you first connect with Diablo?
Yeah, totally. So, I've been playing Diablo since I was about 3 years old.
I remember.
But yeah, and then I knew that I wanted to get into game design. So after graduating from DigiPen, a couple years after that, when I heard about a opening for the dungeon design team, and that just sounded like the dream job.
Yeah.
So even though I was like, I probably won't be able to get this, I still applied for it, ended up getting the design test and all of that. And when I went in for the in-person interview, I just clicked immediately with the people there. They're all just...
You guys spoke the same language.
Exactly. No, they've all been playing Diablo for as long as I have and stuff. So it was just really easy to get along with them.
And I find that interesting how, you were intimidated by Diablo, and it's the thing you loved the most, and it's the thing that you knew the best, but you felt like you had to perhaps, work your way up there. But in the end, it turned out that the thing you loved most was what you were most qualified to do.
Totally. And yeah, I often think about that too with a lot of the other positions I applied for that I didn't get. It just, perhaps those were positions that are basically other people's Diablos, like the things that they're the most passionate about, that perhaps if I got, I wouldn't have appreciated it as much as they had. But with this position, it just...
They're so humble, too.
It just fit perfectly.
You get up every day and play and get paid for it.
I know, right? Yeah, that's all I do, just play the game, yeah.
I love these interviews so much.
Could
This
you
makes me
describe the
just love
process
the
of
franchise
working
even
with
more.
the Diablo team?
So in a word, collaboration. My biggest joy in working with the Diablo team is just the collaborative nature of the whole process. These are the very best concept character designers, game designers in the world. And there's so much talent on that team that they make me look really good when I get to do one of their characters. And as far as breaking down the actual process, usually what happens is there's a brief, there's some basic description of what we want to bring to life in a painting. Sometimes there's a lot of concept work already done, sometimes there's just a minimum. So again, that's the part that I really enjoy. And once we build up that character to the point where everybody likes it, then it's handed off to me to do the final paint. And one thing I love about Blizzard is, even though we have so many hands working on something, they're really good at letting you put your mark and your bit into that piece. So
I love that.
It's incredibly rewarding at the end of the day to, as a fan, to be working on these paintings that I would love to do anyway, but also to be working with such an inspiring, talented team of artists and individuals. Yeah.
Could you tell us a bit about your inspiration for Lilith?
So Lilith, they had a handful of designs started, and I just thought they were beautiful. I thought they hit it out of the park right in the beginning with that one. I did some concept work as well, and it went back and forth. So I loved that I was able to contribute on that level. But at the end of the day, I feel the success of that piece, and I do love that piece, which is rare for me because usually I'm not happy with my paintings when I'm done. I feel the success of that piece is based on the incredible designs I was handed. Again, they made me look good with that one. Can you describe the process of dungeon design and working with the Diablo team?
Dungeons in Diablo are all procedural. They're all made up of basically these little square chunks of levels. My job as a dungeon designer is trying to sort of balance the pure randomness of a dungeon with the uniqueness and character of the dungeon.
Yeah.
If you go too random with the dungeon kind of lacks any sort of feel. There's no real story to it. If it's just random every time, you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, for sure.
And then if it's too unique, it becomes predictable, where if you played that dungeon once, you've played it 100 times basically, and you know what to expect. Again, with that collaborative nature, we're always in contact with dungeon artists, encounter design, and quest design, especially on campaign dungeons. It usually starts off with a back and forth discussion with the dungeon design team and the quest designers, trying to figure out what the story is there, what we're trying to convey and progress in the story of the overall game.
And I have to say, being able to look over your shoulder from time to time, just seeing and hearing the ideas you guys come up with, I'm just so excited to play Diablo 4. I can't wait. And then the added, on top of everything, with our family history playing the game, that the group of us will be able to play your levels and just be like, oh my God, this horrible thing, look what this horrible thing Devin's doing to us now, oh my God.
Yeah, it's definitely taking a return to darkness for sure. And,
Love
yeah,
that.
I think we're all very
Heck
excited
yeah.
about that. But
Yes, we
Dad,
are.
could you tell us a little bit about your personal work?
I had so many of my own visions that I wanted to get out there that I wasn't able to. So I started writing my own stories, and it just started out with short stories and then they grew into larger novels. But what happened is writing these stories sort of re-inspired my want to paint or draw and paint. It was like when I was a little kid. When I was a little kid, I would write a story, draw pictures, and staple it together and make a little book.
I did that too.
And I was doing that again. I was able to write a story, paint all the pictures, and put it together and make a novel. And I've written 5 novels to date, and I'm just finishing my 6th. It's called Slewfoot, The Tale of Bewitchery, and it's a story about witches set in colonial America.
Awesome. Really excited for that
incredible.
one.
Oh
yeah,
my
I remember
gosh.
reading Lost Gods and absolutely loving like the world building that you put into that and stuff.
Oh, I can't wait. I want to check that out.
Really excited for that one.
Okay, so we have a final question here, and it's pretty much to both of us. It's about advice to starting artists and for budding game designers. I think we both touched on this earlier, and when we were speaking about following your muse, following your passion, the things that you love the most is where you put your most energy into and can often be the things that you're the best at. So my advice is, especially to artists, is fill your portfolio with the type of work you like to do. Perhaps apples are the hot thing now and you feel compelled to paint apples because you'll think you'll get that work. But if you love to paint oranges, because you're such a good orange painter, fill your portfolio with oranges.
For game designers in particular, I would say just like play a lot of the games out there and just start writing down things that you really liked or didn't like about those games and why. Just practicing articulating those thoughts will help a lot. If you can, get a hold of game engines like Unity or Unreal and try to teach yourself those and just start creating stuff. Like it can just be simple prototypes or a more fully fledged game project. Anything like that not only helps you develop those skills, but it also gives you things to talk about during interviews. Like people love seeing that you're truly passionate about what you're creating, and every project you make is an opportunity for that.
All right, I think that wraps up our joint interview of today. We really appreciate everybody joining us.
This is a cool idea.
I just want
I
to
love that they
emphasize
did
again,
this.
what a magical community Blizzard has created, and especially with Diablo. It's brought inspiration to myself and my family, and I'm looking forward to seeing Diablo 4.
Me too.
Yeah, see you in hell.
How cool. This art's amazing.
Diablo 2 is a very special game to Blizzard, as many of you well know, and Diablo II also had its 20th year anniversary. So with that, we really wanted to stay true to what that authentic experience was for Diablo II and bring it to the current audience and improve it for the existing audience and invite new people to experience it for the first time. It's also good learning opportunities too for us, especially when we're partnering up with Vicarious Visions now to work on a remaster projects like this together.
So it's been a great partnership. We've actually worked with Blizzard for a while now, a couple years, even starting with some Battle.net integration type things. We just finished Tony Hawk Remaster. Before that, we did Crash Bandicoot Remaster, and it just seemed like a perfect match for us to work together.
It was a shock to my system to come in and then see that it's a remaster trailer. Was not expecting that. But then to see the complete shift in the design and the art and everything, and I'd really love to hear more about how you came up with the process for how you want to remaster the look of it,
so
right?
cool.
How you wanted it to visually
Looks
exist.
so good.
And I'd love to bring in Chris Amaral to talk about some of that. Chris, can you discuss a little bit of the philosophy and the design decisions around this remaster?
So luckily we had a ton of like good inspiration from the original D2 art. Our primary focus is always nostalgia, right? We want to make sure we focus on getting this right and deliver an authentic experience that players remembered from 20 years ago. Every choice we make with the art, with the models, with the environments should really ignite that nostalgia and then reinforce that emotional connection from the original game. But then we came up with like a 70-30 visual guide. 70% is basically the classic. This is where we don't touch. We don't touch what works, right? We want to maintain those iconic shapes, colors, tones. Everything should be one-to-one and faithful to the original. We want things to feel authentic and preserve those original designs. With the 30% new, like that's kind of like where we're going to elevate that art. Every change we make should really signify that step forward visually.
I also noticed that the game was 3D, and can you talk a little bit about the discussion or how you moved and some challenges moving from 2D to 3D?
Well, I mean, evolving from a 2D sprite game, like a 2D image game, to a 3D is very challenging. We basically had to write a complete new PBR renderer, so a physically based renderer on top of the old game logic. It's difficult because you're dealing with models versus 2D sprites, where you have to basically write. You have dynamic lighting, you have dynamic VFX. Like a lot of that is an additional system that we have to work out on our end.
So the follow-up to that question, I suppose, is I wasn't able to see any items when I was watching that trailer. Are all of the items also going to be remastered? All of the gems, all of every single piece of this? And what sorts of flavor did you decide to add to that artwork?
So everything is being redone. So we remodeled everything because everything has to drop in the game. So you have your icon art, and then you have your 3D space art that flips, right? So we had to basically model everything.
It looks so incredible.
And as far as the inspiration, we actually were inspired by some original documentation that we found from Blizzard North, where there was a huge Word doc of like where the original artists pulled inspiration from. So a lot of that was historical landmarks, locations, and very, very much real world referencing. So that was kind of where we kind of pulled our inspiration as well. We wanted that functional design that the original art had. Everything felt like it was believable, and that detail really does help to give it some realistic context and makes you feel more immersed in the game. Like it makes you feel like you're part of this world when you can see every little buckle and strap.
I remember when we went into the tavern and there was garlic hanging from a beam, and we're all like, what's the garlic? And this is all full 3D everything, and then they're like, oh yeah, there was garlic in the old game. We go back and it's like 4 white sprites, and you're like, holy cow, yeah, garlic, and there's hams hanging and everything. So it was really cool to see it almost for the first time.
And it's funny because original SD, like it was made in all 3D. So we actually came across a bunch of screenshots that were a different camera. Like it wasn't the isometric camera. It was like either marketing art or something else, or maybe just exploration. But there was shots of that garlic in the original art.
Cool.
You could never really see it in the pixel art, but it was there. So it was
telling that they were really trying to achieve something very, very grand with this art.
I'm not gonna lie, I never knew that they had garlic hanging in there. I mean, maybe a couple white sprites. I thought they were maybe candles, or who knows? No clue. But that makes me excited to go look around now and just like explore all of the areas in the game, just to look at the new detailed art and see what was.
Well, you see it now too, because also we have the one new feature for the art on the art side of things is a zoom camera. So it'll help you get in there and look at all the details.
We can zoom in on Diablo's
I really felt strongly that like a lot of ARPGs that come out now all have a zoom feature. This will really get you up and close and personal with like your armor, your weapons, like everything, the runes.
Another way to look at it too is our legacy toggle feature, where you can flip back between the old visuals of the game and our current visuals. It's not even just a simple art swap. It is really the old game running underneath, because like Chris was mentioning,
so cool.
Our new art engine our graphics engine is running on top of the game. And is mimicking what is running underneath. It's still following all the same data and rules and timings of everything. So
that'll be so cool
we are
to
still
see.
being true to that 25 frames per second of what the game is underneath, but rendering it in a way that has more frames per second.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that specifically, because when I go into Diablo 2, I'm thinking 25 FPS, and like you said, the game is built on that. My faster casting, my hit recovery, all of this stuff is built on 25 FPS. So how do you create a game that's 60 FPS?
So all of the logic and how the game talks with the server and everything like that runs on that cycle, and that hasn't changed. So we still have benchmarks in all of our content, say for animations of when a hit frame occurs, how long it can recover, and all of that. That all matches exactly. Now it can run at a faster frame rate, and so modern games run on time, not frames. So we've done that, but all of the logic still runs on those same things. So you can wait for your breaks to occur. All of those things still happen at the exact same. And that was through no small effort. But
I was going to say that probably took so much to figure out.
Because even if you can't see it right away, you feel it when it's different. We've done that on lots of areas. So for example, the original game only had so many sprites to render your rotation. So you'd have your character and they're rendered out at so many angles, and the monsters even less. But you could actually walk at greater directions, right? You have, I think it was 64 different squares around you that you would path to, and you'd have feet sliding. We've increased that, so now there's more granularity. Obviously it's 3D, your character can run straight, but underneath the hood, I mean, this is a game made back when the inspiration was tabletop games, and so the game is a grid, so it still respects that grid, right? Like on the controller will still allow you to move small amounts because you push the stick a little bit, but it's still, you're either in a run state or a walk state, stamina's still a thing, you're still on a grid. Like all of that logic, once again, is all being driven by the old game. That hasn't changed.
Rob was mentioning animation. Animation is also like it was very challenging because you only had a few of the frame counts basically make that animation. So it wasn't like a modern game where you have tons of different keys to make it very fluid animation. We had to really like maintain that timing, that pace. The posing was a big focus for us too. We wanted to get those iconic poses for each character, and then just align that silhouette.
So continuing the talk of visuals, I want to talk about characters, cosmetics, how they look. Because I know something that I love with Diablo 2 is just putting on, a scale mail, putting on a full plate mail, putting on a sacred armor, and seeing the character like have the different change and all of that. But some things still don't like reflect over in the color of it or whatnot, right? Some do, some don't. Is there going to be changes there, or is it just enhancing all of those visuals and making them just look even cooler?
So our goal was to basically be one-to-one with parity with the original game. So we built every piece of armor that was in the original game and is now in the remastered version. The only difference we did is with the icon items. So now we have a more connected visual with the icon and the item that drops in the game, where before you had different visuals. That's really the only thing we pushed on as far as modernization.
Yeah, so like shields or weapons, a lot of the unique items that you find in the game had special kind of icon arts, right? And that is something we're actually going to be showing on your character in the new visuals.
Yes!
That definitely excites me. I think that's something a lot of people would love to see, you know, a lance guard and have the cool stuff actually on their character there.
It will be the same model you see on those icons.
Are we going to see
yeah.
remastering of the cinematics in the game?
Yes.
I was going to say, if they're doing it for mobile.
The entire full 28 minutes or whatever is going to be all remastered with new high fidelity art. It's going to look amazing, by the way. So
I can't wait, I bet.
Sound in those also be remastered, and any other sound in the game be remastered?
All of the audio has been remastered, as well as we've added additional, surround sound features. There's more ambient, there's more effects going on. It's just a richer experience if you want to play with your, full setup. However, we have to use that measured hand as well with audio. There's just a lot of very, very iconic sounds.
Exactly
that we really
what I was
couldn't
thinking.
Change, right? Like,
and I'm glad
if you put
sounds
a
like they did it.
skull into your inventory, that pop noise,
Don't change my skull sound.
Exactly, right? So there are certain things you're gonna, you'll hear, for like your footsteps running will have some variety. When the rain kicks in, it's gonna have a lot more depth. When you go to the jungle, you'll hear a lot more life in those, trees.
Oh, I cannot wait to play this.
But yeah, there's just some sounds we couldn't mess with, right?
With Blizzard, when we're creating new games, one of our design philosophies is to what we call find the fun. And when we were looking at D2 again, we very much felt like the fun is still there.
Good,
so it's
yeah.
actually one of our core pillars for Diablo II Resurrected specifically was to keep the fun and keep it at its core. And because of that, we're looking at it more as a remaster at that point, and like what can we do based on what the community wants, or what
was
features naturally are necessary for making this game run on modern day systems and things like that.
I think also we want to thank and appreciate the fan base, right? This is really a true nod to the original game. We want to preserve that game and the structure of that game as much as we can. And if we went with the remake, it would be a completely different game. So I think that was the reason why we chose this.
Yeah, we also felt that, like, for a game during its time back in 2000, based on limitations, or everyone was still looking at strategy guides or just limited internet, it led to that kind of typical game design you see, where there was a lot of mystery, discovery. So we felt like that was another part of, part of keeping the fun, which was to maintain that discovery of the game as well.
So, speaking to maintaining and possibly changing, what are the pieces that did end up staying the same? Or, if it's easier to explain the other way, what are the pieces that were really changed to bring this remaster to life?
So, at its core, we want it to still be the same. So, right away, things like the balance, the monsters you see on the spawn rates, item drops, and things like that are the same. And what we're doing is trying to take any of the rough edges you see, compatibility issues, resolution issues, and obviously the art, improving the arts as well. All these kinds of things you come to know from a remaster, but still maintaining very much what the game is. So,
and when it comes to the features we added, this is probably the biggest area where we scrutinize so much. Is this addition straying too much? Does it still create the same gameplay experience and other things like that? So things like a shared stash, we know people use mule characters, right? And so adding a shared stash, we felt was the right choice.
We have a shared stash?
We have a shared stash.
Yeah.
Oh, thank God.
That's going to be fun to play
now,
with
the way
Lucky.
that the shared stash works is there are rules,
private
right?
stash,
You
no
can't
shared
have
stash.
your ladder characters
Belt charm.
mixing a stash with a non-ladder character. And you can have your offline characters, can't use your online. But for the most part, we're like, people do this anyway with a mule character, so it's okay to give them this feature.
That is like cool. The greatest feature that you could add, because there's nothing worse than opening up the game, going in, dropping all your GG items to mule them over because you've run out of space, and then not being able to log back in, or the game's not created, or it didn't perm in time and losing all of your gear, or trying to find someone to help you transfer your gear over. Because, oh my gosh, a shared stash is amazing. Thank you so much. That's such a help.
Like I said, maintaining the core was a thing, but the other aspect of it was to see where we can improve, right? So the shared stash is one of them, because we saw it as a very common concern, especially around muling, which people had workarounds anyway, right? So that is one thing. Another example is we are reimagining the UI in the game. With a new reimagined UI, we're still trying to stay very faithful to what you come to expect. So you'll still have the classic globes on the HUD screen, the skill icons, the potion belts, and all that. But we are reorganizing a little bit. You know, we're trying to integrate the menu buttons and the stamina bars closer together within the HUD, so it's built a little bit cleaner. And naturally with reimagining a UI, we have some liberties to add a few things. So going back to the information I was talking about, a big thing we're doing on the character screen is we're adding an advanced stats screen as well. So we're going to be showing you all the information you get from items as well. So you don't have to do that kind of math with like looking at each of your items and calculating how much magic find you have, for example. It'll all be like summarized right there for you.
Something that we've seen already in a lot of mods where they've gone ahead and taken that information and created a little screen. So that's really nice to see.
Built into the game.
That you guys are implementing that as well.
We've also added auto gold, so you can opt in. It is a feature you can turn off, which is one of the things we have to be careful of. You know, a handful of other things where we're like, if you want this, you can turn it on, but you can also keep it off. This was actually something that we started looking into when we were adding controller support. There's a lot of paths that we could have taken with controller support, obviously for controllers on console, which we're coming out on, but allowing just plug a controller in for accessibility reasons. For that might be the way you want to play, but it's a PC first experience. Like for example, there's still an inventory grid, there's still inventory Tetris. That's core to what Diablo 2 is, right? Taking that away, it starts to become something different.
I want to jump back to features in a second, but before we do, you just brought up console play, and I feel like we have to jump into console, the decision for console, and how you're gonna make that work. You already talked a little bit about like auto gold, having that to be a little more accessible, but when I think of Diablo 2, I think of a mouse going and clicking everywhere and how does this work on a console?
To say it wasn't a challenge would be a bold lie. So there's a couple things. For the most part, the game thinks you're still using a keyboard and mouse with a controller. That was almost a rule we kept, that helped keep us on the rails, because we didn't want to be sacrificing once again that authentic experience. But we did want to make it more accessible, bring it to a modern audience. I mean, there are people who were born after this game came out that we want them to enjoy it and play it. And a lot of those people are used to, just more modern titles that could use a controller. Also, from an accessibility of just allowing you to plug in a controller helps for many other people to get to enjoy the game. The biggest thing I think that the two big things we'll say. One is you're changing the way you play the game from being kind of an eye in the sky and telling your hero what to do by clicking on areas to actually being your character and directing them. So pathfinding is gone, right? Because you're doing the pathfinding and things like that, which creates some very interesting things. For example, the sorceress's teleport is meant to teleport to wherever you click. So in that area, when you're playing on the console, we will have a kind of a default distance that you will teleport to. Whereas on the PC, you can click wherever you want. Same with Barbarian's Leap, although that one's interesting because it levels. But it's become a very, very fun challenge. Like, I'm a necromancer and I need to target an item on the ground that has a certain keyword. It's working so far, but you guys will be the ultimate judge of that.
Yeah, we've had a lot of talks back and forth, play testing and things like that. A big challenge we had too was categorizing, all those 300 character skills to see how each of them really play, to see what challenges there were. And yeah, like Rob mentions, the Necromancer Iron Golem is a favorite of ours to continuously talk about because of the various ways it can target. Also, like a sorcerer's telekinesis is another example.
Watching the trailer, we see the assassin and druid at the campfire. We see a druid casting tornado. I have to ask though, even still, this includes Lord of Destruction, right? This is going to be a full encompassing remaster and not just classic or just a piece?
That's correct. Yeah, we are going to be including both the base Diablo 2 and the expansion Lord of Destruction as well. And we're even keeping the mode of playing non-expansion character as well, right? So you could still play a classic barbarian, for example, and things like that.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Because that was something I was also going to ask was, will there be classic mode? Because once again, when you go to the purist, you always have the people that go back all the way and they're like, classic is pure and that's it, and I won't play anything else.
Yeah, it was very much a mode we wanted to keep. Even based on popularity, it might not be as much, but it's still a part of the game, and it still leads to interesting ways of playing too, right? A lot of it's even data driven too, so like a lot of the reasons to keep it were pretty clear to us. Like, let's make sure we're not taking something away from this remaster.
I'd love to go ahead and start talking about some of the other features, or continue talking about some of the other features that you had mentioned before, because hearing each of these already has gotten me so excited for this game. And so what are some other little things that you felt could be changed, wouldn't change the whole flow of the game, but just improve it a little bit?
One thing we're looking into is making it easier to interact with your stash. So having quick keys to move to your stash is one thing versus like dragging the mouse to every time you want to move something to your stash. Other things we're looking at as well are like an item comparison tooltip. So in case you're looking at some other item, you can hold shift or whatever controller button is mapped, and then you can see what equipped items you have just for quick glances, things like that.
The item comparison is a great example of us adding it, but added it with a measured hand. So we don't suggest any gear for anybody. The gear in Diablo 2 is so quirky and different, and every class can use everything, that us recommending things like that actually was more confusing to people. So you hold shift and it's like, here's what you got equipped, here's what it is.
I think that's the great way to do it with Diablo 2, because I agree. I mean, I think that's one of the best parts about Diablo 2. The items are so fantastic, so unique in their own design, that it would be near impossible to have a tooltip that could actually recommend one or the other.
Yeah.
You know, because it's all so unique to every situation and character and skill build and everything.
We added 5 more languages, so that's a feature to a lot of people who speak those other languages. The whole front end is pretty much modernized now, so your character is much bigger front and center right in the beginning, and you'll have a backdrop of whatever act you're in. So that's all been streamlined. You can still play online or offline, but that flow has been improved.
So what are your favorite changes that each of you have within the game so far?
There's a lot of fun. It's fun to see a lot of the art come to life with our new visuals. So for me, one of the things I've been waiting for since like first starting on this game was to see that character creation campfire scene come to life in our new arts. And I'm really happy to see how far it's progressed, and I love seeing that. It's just such an iconic moment. It's the first thing you really see in the game before you get started. And it's amazing.
Can I say all the art? No, I'm just kidding. So we added, like Rob mentioned, we added like an act-specific screen in the front end. And it's basically this large screen where we have like a diorama of each act, and it's amazing to see because it feels like you're really there. Like you can see the detail, you can see every aspect of the scene, and like it just has that very immersive feeling to it. So that's probably my favorite part.
I think mine is a little bit more squishy. I think our game has gotten a little scarier. I think that there are certain areas in the game where just the way that the 3D lighting is and the way the sound is, and I play it on a big screen TV sometimes, and just it feels scarier. It feels creepier and a little more claustrophobic in certain areas. That's not just one feature. There's a lot of things going on there, but I think it's really, really cool. I would like to hope that had the original creators had the tools we have today, it's the experience they would have wanted to make.
I love that.
Yeah, I think the lighting really helps with that too, because we're a 3D game. That's one of the biggest differences between the original games. So what the game had before with the sprites, with 3D models built into sprites, was not a true real-time lighting system. So because we're pushing that with a 3D graphics engine running on top of the game and getting actual 3D lighting inside of those kinds of caverns and corridors makes for a very interesting experience now, because it just feels more immersive with having light react around you like that.
Yeah, I would definitely say, I mean, I've only seen the trailer piece you sent me, but even from that, just seeing like down in the tunnels or the sewers or, you know, any of those like you said, cavern dungeonous zones, the lighting, it was darker and brighter, and then things like
I can't wait to hear like surround sound.
It just had like this different, I agree, creepier feel.
Yes.
So I haven't seen much more than, or anything more than you guys
listening to the
showed
community's
me,
feedback
but
on
there
3.
was definitely a different feel to the game, and I loved the fire the most. I think just watching like the sorceress meteor was like gorgeous.
Fire and lightning, once we got all the effects up and running, that was definitely a couple of times where we would be just in a review and we're like, oh, like, and 10 minutes would go by and we're like, oh crap, we had a meeting, we were just playing now. Another thing that kind of goes without saying, that just because it's parody, but 8-player multiplayer, that just works, but once again, it was tricky to get that going.
So with multiplayer, are there going to be any changes, any differences in there from PvP to trading to how players interact, you know, units blocking each other? I mean, all sorts of stuff.
So with multiplayer, we want to keep all the features you've known and loved there. So PvP will still be there, down to like opening the party window and engaging hostility. Trading is still going to function the same as you know. You know, you can go into games, trade items, or talk in chat channels and things like that. Areas of improvement, though, like I said, going back to my mentioning of reimagining a lot of the UI, improvements to the battlement lobby. So we're trying to look at some things like improving like how you browse server games. Like, so when you're looking at a game to join and typing passwords and things like that, that's the kind of area we're trying to see how we could smooth out in ways like making sure you can browse normal games, Nightmare games, and Hell games, even though you've graduated to the higher difficulty. I'm sure you've known that.
There's nothing worse than accidentally killing Bale in Nightmare when you're trying to do Nightmare Bale runs and you're like, I can't find any of the games anymore for Nightmare Bale runs.
But you can if you log into a separate character.
Right, you go to a separate character and then look at it.
That was kind of our logic, right? Since there are workarounds there, that made it easier for us to make the decision of allowing some of those things. Another change is also looking into reducing ladder seasons overall. So right now, ladder seasons in Diablo 2 are 6 months, and we're looking at reducing that as well to help have more engagement and kind of drive more incentives too. You know, 6 months is a long time, and we're looking into like if we make it shorter, we could probably have greater beats throughout the year, as well as seeing people strive harder for getting like that to that level 99, right?
So is there going to be any reward change on that, or will it just simply be, you know, the same standard? You get to 99, you're 99 on that leaderboard, and I mean that's a giant reward in itself, but I don't know if there's any other piece go up on the Battle.net website or something.
We're not looking into adding anything beyond what the game really did, but in some ways there will be some things that kind of come out of because of what we changed. So we have the ladder, the leaderboard, right, where you can see each class going to level 99. There are easier ways to filter through that. And we're also looking into saving that, right? So you can always look back to previous seasons as well. So in a way, we're creating that kind of legacy now that has kind of been dropped from the past. So that's one advantage, is your names could be there in the legacy if you're looking in the past. Rob touched on it a little bit, but another mention there was going to global servers as well. So this is a new thing we're doing, where the concept of US West, US East, Asia regions, and EU are no longer going to be a thing in terms of like being on separated servers. So now, for the push for a global play with Diablo 2, you can now be able to join across people around the world.
I think that's a fantastic change. That's always been one of the like saddest parts is like they're on EU and I'm on, you know, US East, and then my other friend's on US West, and it's like, how do we get us all together? You know, like,
That's
okay, somebody has to make a
awesome.
sacrifice there. And so that seems like a really positive change. So far, you guys are killing it. I'm loving absolutely. I just want to say, like, I'm loving all of the changes and all of the decisions that have been made. It
Me
feels like
too.
you're really respecting the integrity of the game, but really bringing in a lot of that quality of life, because Diablo 2 just had some of those pain points like muling and separate servers and all of that. So I just want to throw that out there really quick.
There's a lot of love and care going on into this. Like we're very passionate about Diablo 2. You know,
You can tell,
I can
which
even
I
give you little
love.
anecdotes of when I started on the team. I was
Yeah, I
asking
love
around
hearing.
too. Naturally, as a designer, I want to know as much as possible about this game in order to make good decisions on a remaster. So I asked around, like, what kind of files and leftover archives do we have from before, from Blizzard North? And I was told, like, I was given some, and like this, I was told that was it, which I quickly disbelieved, because I like to just do my own little digging arounds to find out things. So I dug around a lot in a lot of archives, and I looked around in different teams as well, because naturally a game from 20 years ago, people have moved on different teams, and like where has data moved around across our other games across Blizzard. So it was within folders, I like to say, that I found a lot of old source files from Diablo 2. A lot of things, like within folders of saying stuff we should archive. And there was a lot of stuff to archive indeed, because there are a lot of things, like we're talking like model source files, old tools that Blizzard North used to create like the sprites and things like that. All these things I spent months and months organizing and communicate that out to the team, and help getting Blizzard library team and other people to help out too, to help share as much information as possible.
Thank
which
you.
helps a lot with when we're adapting some of these models and whatnot and making new art out of it, because you know sometimes those pixels aren't good enough, and if we have some kind of source model to look at, if we have it, now we can make even closer decisions.
On that day when he found that, I think that really helped me greatly. Like, we sent all of that imagery, even the models, I think we sent over to the outsource teams and different art teams, which they used as like a stepping stone. The only piece of art we actually reused one-to-one were Tyrael's wings. So we actually took the Tyrael wings from the old Max file, and then just repurposed that for hours. Like, we did very little work, very little modernization of that. We just made it work. But yeah, we did follow a lot of the rules that the old game actually used. For like another example is the succubus, in which I think the old Blizzard North model, they reused the assassin mesh for the body, and we did the same thing. We use our assassin mesh for the succubus.
Yeah, a lot of fun discoveries that we're actually kind of making the same decisions on in interesting ways. Another example too, like, is because we found a lot of stuff. There's a lot of old texture files for some environments on the game. So another example is like the walls you see in the Act 2 tombs with those kinds of like paintings on them are the same textures we're using, because we found the source files for those.
Any symbology we have
cool.
questions on, we always like jump into that archive, try to find some kind of source or reference or something, and we just reuse it as much as possible. We want this to be as true as possible.
That can even carry over to the cinematics too, you know, like a lot of the cinematics cover the same locations. Think of like Tal Rasha's tomb with Baal in front of it, and there's all those runes going on behind him. Finding sources like that to try to match as much as possible was a goal, and I'm glad to say we did find those kinds of things, and are matching it very well. So it's helping our cinematics too.
There was even concepts we repurposed. Like, we found a couple concepts that were amazing from 20 years ago. The Bloodhawk and the Bloodhawk Nest, and we used that completely to rebuild our new asset.
I mean, that's fascinating. I feel like I could just sit here for hours and hours, days, as you guys talk through every single thing you found in the source files.
I could too. I'm still organizing it to this day. I still could find something that could work out. As I put it, I'm very meticulous with this stuff because I love it so much. You know, I'm putting, like, categorizing everything. Like, this is everything I found on War Eve. This is everything I found on on the greater mummy monster or Bale or something, and then if Chris comes to me and needs help with like some kind of way of identifying what parts of the creatures are or something, I even go through lengths of like seeing if I could open up those models and actually re-rendering them out in a way that we could actually see it in higher detail and like, you know, see like what, like, oh, the greater mummy is showing like part of his bone on his knee, so we should try to match that.
Yes,
or something like that.
I love
and there's a lot of
this.
interesting stories and references that we actually used to create the new art by re-rendering models out to see everything.
Yeah, it was literally like video game archaeology, and
so
even
cool.
learning how parts of
How fun for
D1
them.
were made, parts of the code that were commented out. Totally geek out on just all of
Look
the.
at that.
You know, because it's
Slimy
it's
purple
a
tongue like
game
an
that we
earthworm.
all kind of grew up in, and a lot of us got into the games industry because of these types of games, and this game in particular, right? Like, and so it's almost like we're treating it like a classic car, right? Like, okay, it probably shouldn't run on leaded gas anymore, but you really can't change it, right? You just got to make it, you know, good enough, even better, you know, than they remember, and good for another 20 years.
Yeah, and even like, you
Preserve
know,
what you
mentioning
loved about
Diablo
it.
1 is very key too. Like we look at Diablo 1 as well, because naturally this being a sequel to Diablo 1, especially within the time span of when it came, like Diablo 1, you know, was 1996 and Diablo 2 2000. A lot of things carried over throughout development. So going back to see Diablo 1 and what it's like also helped us make decisions, even some of the arts too, because like we discovered certain things we didn't even realize before until later down the line. Like an example is in the Chaos Sanctuary, you see a lot of statues with these black knights, and those are actually the same Chaos Knights you see in Diablo 1. So like sometimes some of the things I find even source files from Diablo 1 were useful for us for reference, so we can make the new statues and things like that.
Even the sorcerer and the Act 3 hireling shared very similar models. Like it was just an addition helmet or a little bit of detail on the chest, but that was really the difference.
You guys need to do a just like developer archaeology
Documentary?
discussion at some point where you just sit down and talk through all of this, because this is like the most fascinating stuff I've heard. I mean,
I agree. I
played
love
so
hearing
much
this
Diablo
stuff.
2 that I know so many intricacies of the game, but like when there's like more to be discovered, it's like, oh,
This is like
man,
the fresh
I'm like
meat
itching to
of it
know.
all,
So
you know?
I would
Yeah, that's
love
the funny
to
thing.
just listen.
The funny thing is, like, you know, going back to our like core philosophies on the game, like, you know, we wanted to keep discovery and the mystery and stuff. Because you keep discovering things all the time when you play Diablo 2, like all these little hidden rules and informations. It kind of carries that fascination over through development as well. Like we find a lot of things in the code, design
And, like,
documents,
Easter
models,
eggs, like
things
from
that
Diablo
that
1.
were really fascinating to see like how they were made. And yeah, I learned something new every day on the projects.
One thing, shifting back to the online play here, I know there's definitely going to be questions around security. How are we handling duping? How are we handling bots? How are we handling, you know, just anything around that, realm downs, and all of the disconnects and all of that good stuff that we deal with online? What's being taken, or what actions being taken there?
So moving over to modern BattleNet helps us with a lot of those types of things. To say it's, you know, Loctite, I wouldn't dare do that. That's like throwing a gauntlet down to the community to try to break it. But all of that should be far more secure now. Now, we do still allow you to play offline, right? You will need to authenticate that your copy is legit, but after that, you won't be bothered. And so there's a reason why we leave those characters quarantined away from online.
I mean, yeah, we have a server team working on it, and these are some of their efforts, right? We want to stop the bots, stop duping as much as possible. There's a lot of strides happening in the back end of things.
So I'm excited to play this game, and I'm sure a lot of other people are very excited. How can we sign up for this closed beta? And
yes,
when will
please.
this game be
Yes,
coming out?
yes.
Actually, we will be doing a technical alpha, and you can sign up on our webpage today for future waves of invites. As for the game itself, it will be releasing 2021.
Well, I just want to say thank you
This year.
to the remastering team right here. I absolutely am blown away by how much effort and how much passion you guys are putting into this game and just into Diablo 2. I've loved Diablo 2 for 20 years, and I never thought that the game could get better. But I think you guys are respecting the integrity while upgrading and adding and improving.
Exactly.
And I think this is going to overall just better the game. So
It's gonna
thank
be
you guys so
amazing.
much. I appreciate you.
I wanna,
having
like,
me
clap,
on,
like-
and for all of the hard work you've done.
Awesome, thank you. I mean, your praise means the world to us. I mean, you and people like you who keep the game going for 20 years. Like, that's, if you guys didn't do that, this might not be happening, right?
Yeah,
We see
that's
the
true.
passion,
So many people still love this game and play
in
it and
what
pick
you
it up
do
every day.
and what your colleagues do. Like, so thank you even more. And thanks for coming to do this. This was fun.
The hell? Secrets cow level go. Where's the worst leg? I want to see that in HD.